Everything we know is a lie, and we were never meant to find out. If everything you know is a lie, check out Pantheon, our brand inspired by myths, legends and folklore. We ship worldwide and are rated excellent on Trustpilot. Link in the description. Onions. Layers under layers under layers. You peel one back and there's always another underneath. It gives the impression of depth, but also of concealment. What if our reality works the same way? What if what we experience as the world is just one of many layers? The part we're able to perceive, interact with and understand, while everything beneath it remains hidden. Over 2,000 years ago, Greek philosopher Plato spoke of a group of people who had spent their entire lives confined within a cave, positioned so that they could only ever look forward. Behind them a fire burns, and between that fire and their backs, objects are carried past, casting shadows onto a wall in front of them. Those shadows become their world. They learn patterns, recognize shapes, build an understanding of reality based entirely on what they can see. There's no reason for them to question it, as there's nothing else available to compare it to. From their perspective, what they're looking at, it is reality. But it isn't. The shadows are the result of something happening out of sight, something that exists behind them, beyond their awareness. Everything they believe about the world is built on a layer that hides the thing producing it. They have no awareness that anything is missing. Once understood, even as a thought experiment, it changes how we look at everything else. The same idea keeps showing up, different places, different beliefs, no connection between them, and yet it keeps coming back. That this isn't the base layer, that something exists beyond it. That what we're experiencing might be limited, filtered, maybe even built in a way that stops us from seeing what's underneath. The ideas shouldn't line up, but they do. So let's look at the evidence, starting with the demiurge. In Gnostic belief is the creator of the world we're living in. It isn't the highest god or the true source of everything, but something beneath. The idea starts with a split. There's a figure called Sophia, who tries to create a being on her own, without the full knowledge or power of the true source. What comes out of that act is cut off, something that exists but doesn't fully understand where it came from. The demiurge. It comes into existence without context, and from that position, it looks at what it creates and assumes it's the highest authority there is. So when it builds the world, it does it from that position. There's no deception. It creates what it can, based on what it understands, and what it creates is solid. The world behaves properly. Things happen in order. Cause leads to effect. We can learn how it works, rely on it, build our lives inside it. It's like being born into a house that's been perfectly built. The walls are straight, the doors open and close, nothing feels out of place. From the inside, there's no obvious reason to think that anything is missing. If everything works, we don't question it. We don't walk around checking whether the foundations go deeper, we just live in it. The world gives us enough to feel complete, and that sense of completeness keeps us focusing on what's already here. It's like being inside a closed room with no windows. If the room has everything you need, we don't spend time looking for a way out. We settle into it. Cozy. Alongside the demiurge are the archons. They aren't creators or builders. Their role is closer to maintenance. They keep everything running the way it already does. Think of them less like rulers and more like something that keeps the lights on and the system ticking over. As long as the world stays consistent, as long as everything behaves the way we expect it to, nothing pushes us to question it. Everything stays in place because everything continues to make sense. Then there's us. This is where the idea becomes more than just a story about creation. The body belongs to this world. It follows its rules. It's made from the same stuff. It fits. Awareness is treated differently. It's described as coming from that higher source the demiurge never had access to. So when we end up in a strange position, we live inside this reality, fully part of it in one sense, while carrying something that doesn't originate from it. Most of the time, that difference doesn't show up in any obvious way. Life carries on, the world works, we learn it, navigate it, build meaning inside it. Then something shifts, a moment where it clicks. Gnosis, a shift in understanding. The house you're in still stands, but you realize it isn't the only one that exists. Nothing around you changes, but your position inside it does. From there, another question follows. If this world has been made, what was it made from? The answer leads us beyond the demiurge, a source that isn't limited in the same way. Something complete, whole. The origin of everything rather than just a layer within it. That's where Sophia comes from. Her attempt to create a being on her own causes a break. The demiurge comes out of that break, and the world we're in follows after it. Gnosis is recognizing that shift, seeing that what we're living in is part of something larger, rather than the starting point of everything. The world still holds together, it just no longer feels final. From that point, the goal changes. It moves away from building a life entirely inside this world or trying to fully master it. Everything here belongs to the same structure. No matter how far we go, we're still inside what was built. The focus turns to recognition, understanding what this space is and where we stand in relation to it. That leads on to the idea of return. Awareness comes from that higher source. The end goal becomes returning to it, by no longer being fully tied to this layer when life ends. Think of it like this. Someone can live their entire life inside a closed space and accept it completely. Once they realize it's only part of something larger, their relationship to it changes. They're still inside, but they no longer belong to it in the same way. It determines whether we remain in this world or move beyond it. William Blake was an English poet, painter and printmaker, born in London in 1757. He lived through the Industrial Revolution, a period when science and reason were taking over everything. The machine was becoming the model for existence, the universe as clockwork, the mind as process. If you couldn't measure it, it wasn't real. Blake thought that was exactly the problem. He saw visions his entire life. As a child, he saw angels sitting in trees, figures moving through the world around him that nobody else could see. As an adult, those visions became more detailed. Specific beings, specific roles, coming back across decades of work and slowly building into a complete picture. What they showed him was a world designed to keep you inside it. At the center of what Blake uncovered are four beings he called the Zoas. Each one represents a core part of what it means to be human. Urizen is reason, cold, precise ordering. Luva is passion and emotion. Thamas is the body and instinct. Urthona is imagination. Together they form something Blake calls Albion, a complete human consciousness, whole, unified, able to perceive everything available to it. That wholeness was broken. Your reason split away. Reason, no longer needing the others, went off and built a world entirely on its own terms, and when that happened, the rest fractured with him. Luva became orc, passion with nowhere to go, curdling into rage and rebellion. Thamas lost coherence entirely. Urthona became loss, still carrying creative fire but working inside limits now rather than beyond them. Four forces that were meant to work as one, each now a shadow of what they were. He's describing the structure of your consciousness right now. The way reason walls off imagination, the way logic trains you to distrust anything that sits outside what can be proven, the way the measurable world gradually becomes the only world worth paying attention to. We are the Zoas, already fragmented, already working with a fraction of what we were actually capable of. Your reason is the figure that matters most here. Blake called him the Ancient of Days, leaning over the world with a compass drawing its edges before anything inside them had even begun, setting the limits of reality from the very start. Sound familiar? Same mechanics as the demiurge. A construction so functional it produces the feeling of completeness. A room with everything inside it, so you stop looking for a door. But Blake goes a step further. He shows you where those limits actually live, inside perception itself. The demiurge built the room. Blake shows us why we never thought to look for a way out. DMT, dimethyltryptamine, a compound found in plants, in animals, and in small amounts inside your own body right now. It's been used for centuries across South America through ayahuasca, taken within ritual settings with guides who know what they're doing. In its concentrated form, the experience is different. There's no easing in. Within seconds, everything you know as reality is gone, replaced, completely. At lower doses, things distort, patterns appear, colours intensify, the room starts to breathe. Strange, but you're still in the room. Still in your body. Reality feels bent but present. A breakthrough is something else entirely. The body disappears. The room disappears. The transition is rarely described as peaceful. People talk about being pulled, dragged, launched through a tunnel or a portal, as if something on the other side wanted them there, and what's waiting is a fully formed world. Its own architecture with its own logic and rules, a place that was already running before you arrived. People describe geometric structures that fold and reorganize while staying coherent, spaces that feel engineered, environments with depth and layout that hold together with the same consistency as the room they'd just left behind. It feels discovered rather than created. And then there are the beings. In the 1990s, Terence McKenna, an American ethnobotanist, was one of the first people to speak publicly about what he encountered. Small, fast-moving, intensely aware. He called them machine elves, because he needed a reference point for something that had no name. Thousands of people across different countries, different cultures, different decades with zero contact with each other described the same encounter. Small beings, highly active, completely aware of your presence. They respond to you, they engage with you. Some feel playful, some feel clinical, some feel like they've been waiting. There is a separate experience happening to separate people in separate rooms, independently. The same spaces, the same beings, the same feelings of arriving somewhere that was already there. The communication follows its own rules. Information arrives complete, whole, already understood, as if ideas are placed directly into awareness rather than spoken. The translation into words happens afterwards, and people consistently describe it as inadequate. Something gets lost, but the direction of what's being communicated holds across thousands of accounts. Reality is larger than what you're living in. Consciousness extends beyond the body. What you experience as the world is one layer of something much bigger. Then there's ego death, the point where the sense of being a separate person stops. Your name, your history, your position in the world, all of it falls away. The full experience lasts minutes. People report hours, days, lifetimes. What even is time? And then it ends. Then the room comes back. The body comes back. Everything slots back into place as if nothing happened. Two completely different realities, both feeling equally real while you're inside them. If reality can be replaced that completely, that seamlessly, while retaining its feeling of being real, what exactly is reality made of? The DMT space feels like a place, one that exists whether you're here or there. And thousands of people keep arriving at the same place, seeing the same things, being met by the same beings, coming back with the same message. Every account points the same way. Away from here. Astral projection is the experience of consciousness leaving the physical body and moving through a separate layer of reality entirely. Awareness separating from the body it's supposed to be locked inside and going somewhere else. It happens during sleep, meditation, moments of extreme physical stress, sometimes deliberately, sometimes completely uninvited. And the people it happens to come from every culture, every era, every corner of the world. Ancient Egyptians called it the Ka. Tibetan Buddhists built entire practices around navigating it. The Hermetic tradition mapped it in detail, separate civilizations arriving at the same discovery independently. Consciousness can leave. The experience typically begins with the body becoming heavy, paralyzed, locked in place, while awareness remains fully sharp. Then comes the sensation of lifting, separating, rising above the physical body and looking back down at it. Still in the room, but free of it. From that point, movement becomes possible, and what opens up is vast. Robert Monroe was an American businessman who began having spontaneous out-of-body experiences in the 1950s. He had zero framework for what was happening, but rather than dismissing it, he started logging everything, every experience, every environment, every encounter documented in precise detail across years of repeated projection. He eventually founded the Monroe Institute, dedicating the rest of his life to researching what he had stumbled into. What Monroe found was a layered reality. He mapped 3 distinct locales beyond the physical. Locale 1 sits closest to the physical world, mirroring it closely enough to become recognizable. Locale 2 extends further out, vast and less fixed, governed by thought and intention rather than physical rules. Locale 3 sits beyond that, stranger still, operating on principles that have almost no relationship to anything this world follows. Around the same time Monroe was logging his experiences, a separate body of researchers were building their own map entirely independently. Theosophy was a movement founded in the late 1800s dedicated to investigating the nature of consciousness and the hidden structure of reality. They approached it a way a scientist approaches a new field. Systematic, documented, peer-reviewed within their own community, and through decades of combined research and projection across multiple practitioners, they charted the same territory Monroe would later stumble into on his own. What they found aligned, a series of ascending planes beyond the physical. The astral plane sitting immediately above it, fluid and responsive. Beyond that, the mental plane, then the causal. Each one further from the density of physical reality, each one operating with greater freedom and greater scope. 2 completely separate mapping systems built independently across different eras, describing the same architecture. The territory is real enough to chart, and it's populated. Beings exist within it, move through it, and interact with some of those who arrive there. Some feel ancient, some feel purposeful, some feel like they have been there far longer than any human consciousness passing through. If the astral plane was something the projecting mind generated from the inside, it would reflect only what that mind already contained. Instead, it arrives pre-populated, active, a place with its own inhabitants going about their own existence, completely independent of whoever just showed up. Which brings it back to this world, the physical plane, the densest and most restricted layer in a much larger structure. Its rules are the tightest. The range is the smallest. Consciousness operating inside a physical body is consciousness operating under the heaviest set of constraints available. Astral projection is what happens when those constraints fall away. This is the basement. Even today, the academics are catching up. Simulation theory is the idea that the reality we live in, everything we can see, touch, and measure and experience, is not a base reality. That it was constructed, engineered, that what we experience as the physical world is in essence a program, and that somewhere beyond it, something else exists that built it and runs it. It sounds like science fiction. The academic community thought so too, until the maths started making it difficult to dismiss. In 2003, a philosopher at Oxford University published a paper that quietly unsettled a significant portion of the scientific and academic community. Nick Bostrom's simulation argument was simple on the surface. If it's possible to create a simulated reality indistinguishable from a real one, and if civilizations advanced enough to build such simulations would likely run many of them, then the odds of any given conscious experience occurring inside the base reality, the original, are vanishingly small. Statistically, we are almost certainly inside a simulation. Bostrom presented it as a logical argument, and the reaction it produced was something else entirely. Physicists started paying attention, philosophers started paying attention. Eventually, it reached the mainstream. Elon Musk summarized the public version bluntly, stating that the odds of us living in a base reality are 1 in billions. Whether you agree with him or not, the fact that the argument had moved from an Oxford philosopher paper to a dinner table conversation said something about how seriously people were taking it. Then physics started producing evidence pointing in the same direction. The double-slit experiment, quantum entanglement, and Planck length. 3 completely separate areas of physics, each arriving at the same uncomfortable conclusion. That reality responds to being observed. That distance and time break down at the quantum level. That physical existence itself has a resolution limit, a point where it simply stops rendering. A constructed system behaves exactly that way. But the idea itself is ancient. We just keep finding new ways to say it. When we step back from the individual stories, the specifics start to fade, and a single architecture emerges. It looks like a single discovery, translated into different languages across thousands of years. Across every system we've looked at, the pillars are identical. First, what if reality is not the base layer? Whether you call it the basement, the interface, or a simulation, the question remains. What if what we touch and see is just the rendered surface? What if it's the skin of something much deeper, much older, and much more complex than we're allowed to perceive? Second, why are there barriers, filters, constraints? Is it possible our perception is simply a screen, one that doesn't show us the world but protects us from the sheer scale of what's actually there by simplifying it into something we can handle? Third, who are the keepers? Why do we keep encountering limits that feel actively maintained? From the archons to the machine elves and the entities on the astral plane, who are they? Are they the staff? The maintenance crew whose job is to keep the system consistent, the rules functioning, and the inhabitants focused on the interior of the room? And finally, why is access restricted? Why are we born into the cozy house, given a set of rules and told that this is all there is? Different systems, different eras, different tools. Same conclusion. Are we living in a contained environment? A layer designed for stability rather than for truth? Which brings us back to the start. The fire. The shadows. The group of people who have spent their entire lives looking at the wall, convinced that the shapes moving across it are the only things that exist. We've spent centuries debating Plato's allegory. We've treated it as a lesson in history or a thought experiment about the past. But after looking at the house, the grid, the breach, and the code, we have to ask a different question. Are we the ones in the cave?